Arlis Perry was just 19 years old when she was brutally murdered inside Stanford University's Memorial Church in October of 1974. Her story has lingered for decades, wrapped in mystery, whispers of ritual, and the slow march of justice that finally identified her killer more than 40 years later. Arlis grew up in Bismarck, North Dakota, in a devout Lutheran household. Friends and family described her as quiet, gentle, and deeply religious. She sang in the church choir, joined Bible study, and was active in her community. She married Bruce Perry, her high school sweetheart, in the summer of 1974. Only a few months later, the couple moved to California, where Bruce was beginning his studies as a pre-med student at Stanford University. Arlis found work as a receptionist at a local law firm. To many who knew them, the Perrys looked like a young couple with a promising life ahead of them. On the evening of October 12, 1974, Arlis and Bruce had a minor disagreement in their apartment, reportedly about the tire pressure on their car. Arlis, who often took walks when she needed space, decided to go out alone around 11:30 p.m. She told Bruce she was heading to Stanford's Memorial Church to pray, something she sometimes did. Bruce stayed home and later fell asleep, assuming his wife would return soon. Around midnight, the church security guard, 19-year-old Stephen Crawford, noted seeing Arlis enter the church. Other witnesses reported seeing her as well, either walking nearby or inside the building. She never came home. At 5:45 a.m. the following morning, Crawford unlocked the church doors. Inside, he made a chilling discovery. Arlis's body was found sprawled near the altar. She had been beaten, strangled, and sexually assaulted with a candlestick from the church. Her jeans had been carefully removed and folded beside her, and one of the church's candles was placed between her breasts. Another was inserted in her body. The scene looked deliberate, ritualistic even. The brutality of the murder, combined with the staging, would fuel decades of speculation about whether Arlis had been killed by a lone predator or as part of something larger, perhaps a cult-like ritual. Investigators quickly launched a massive inquiry. Bruce Perry, her husband, was initially considered but soon cleared after passing a polygraph test and cooperating fully with police. The janitor, other students, and people who had been in the area were interviewed. Rumors spread that Arlis's religious devotion had somehow marked her, that she had attracted the attention of darker forces. In the 1970s, stories about satanic cults were common, and her murder scene seemed to fit those fears. But no concrete evidence supported those theories. The security guard who had seen her that night, Stephen Crawford, was also questioned. He told investigators he had seen her enter but not leave, and that he had discovered her body the next morning. At the time, there was nothing tying him to the crime. Without DNA testing or advanced forensic tools, police had few leads. For years, the case remained unsolved, growing cold despite repeated efforts to find answers. The decades that followed brought both false leads and haunting claims. In the 1980s, serial killer David Berkowitz, the infamous Son of Sam, claimed knowledge of her murder, suggesting that it was linked to a cult. This connection fueled more speculation, but investigators found no hard evidence to connect Berkowitz or any cult activity to Arlis Perry's death. To many, the crime still seemed too staged, too strange, to have been the work of a lone individual. Yet, with no new evidence, the trail went cold. Meanwhile, Stephen Crawford lived an unremarkable life in California. He had continued working security after leaving Stanford, then drifted into other jobs. While some officers privately held suspicions about him, there was no way to prove anything. That changed with the rise of DNA technology. In the 2000s, cold case detectives revisited the evidence collected in 1974. Biological samples preserved from the crime scene were tested with modern methods. By 2016, the results pointed squarely to Crawford. After more than 40 years, investigators finally had the evidence they needed. They spent months building the case, preparing to make the arrest. On June 28, 2018, law enforcement officers arrived at Crawford's apartment in San Jose with a search warrant. As they entered, Crawford pulled out a handgun and shot himself. He died instantly, taking with him any chance of hearing a confession or explanation for the crime. But the DNA evidence was conclusive. Police announced that Stephen Crawford had murdered Arlis Perry that night inside Memorial Church. He had lived freely for decades, hiding in plain sight. Before the truth caught up to him, the resolution of the case brought some closure, though questions still linger. Why did Crawford kill her? Was it premeditated or a crime of opportunity? And why did he stage the scene so deliberately, with such ritualistic elements? The answers died with him. For Bruce Perry, who went on to become a respected psychiatrist and author, the tragedy was life-altering. He rarely speaks about Arlis today, but her story remains tied to his life's path. For her family back in North Dakota, the resolution came too late for her parents, who had passed away without knowing the truth. Yet, for the community that followed the case for decades, the confirmation of her killer's identity closed one of California's most chilling cold cases. The murder of Arlis Perry remains infamous, not only for its brutality but also for the eerie setting inside one of Stanford's most sacred buildings. It's a story that haunted true crime investigators for generations, a case that seemed almost unsolvable until science finally caught up with it. More than 40 years after her death, the quiet, devout teenager from North Dakota finally had her justice, though her voice and the answers to the questions surrounding her death were silenced forever.